Welcome into the Inside Scoop. Today's Wednesday, October 9th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and boy, do we have a loaded show today. We're going to talk Tennessee, Alabama, Miami, Oregon. We're going to have Chad Simmons on the show. We're going to have way more than that. But first, the NCAA dropped a big one on us today. If you follow recruiting, then what happened this morning is monumental. No more letters of intent. That's right. The NCAA came out today and said no more letters of intent. Does this mean signing day's canceled? We're going to get into it. We got Pete and Nakos here. That's going to be the first segment of the show. Let's get to it. We got breaking news. The NCAA has canceled signing day. I mean, pretty much, kind of. Today, news broke that the letters of intent that recruits normally sign is no more. I got On3's Pete and Nakos here with me. We're going to break it all down. But first, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. Major changes taking place. You're going to want to be subscribed. We're going to break it all down. All right, Pete, no more letters of intent. Does this mean that signing day, which I've been saying is 10, 11 weeks away, December 4th was the early signing day. Is it canceled?
It's not canceled, Josh. But it's going to look a lot different than we've gotten to know for the last, actually, like over 50 years now.
Okay, so the letter of intent is gone, but we were talking on the phone before I got in, and you say that there is still something to sign.
Yeah, so, revenue sharing is coming to college sports. And that's supposed to start the 25-26 academic year. So all the recruits we're talking about right now, they're going to be the first class who get that revenue sharing dollars. Okay, So the NCAA made this move today because they're going to need to reshape and rethink what a binding agreement looks like for an athlete when so many dollars are attached. And that is why we've seen the national letter of intent go away. So there's still going to be binding documents moving forward. Those need to be reshaped and rewritten. But for the time being, yes, the national letter of intent is officially dead as we know it.
All right. Do you think that this is going to be the norm moving forward, or it sounds like we're in like a temporary weird space that we're going to get some finality to in a year or two?
I would say that timeline, yeah, maybe a little.
Was a necessary step. That's what
this was a necessary step to the end destination.
Okay.
Yes.
So finally, we agree with the move that the NCAA made.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe. All right. So because you said that December 4th, early signing day, will still be there, but it's going to look a little different. What do you mean by that? What exactly do you think it could look like?
Well, to be honest with you, Josh, I don't think we know exactly what December 4th, which is 10, 11 weeks away at this point, is going to look like this year, especially with today's decision. The one thing that we will know, though, is athletes are obviously going to enroll in universities. Athletes are always going to want to announce where they're going to college. And in this age of NIL and soon to be revenue sharing, I think more and more we're going to see athletes announce financial agreements, whether it be with the third-party collective or eventually with the institution.
Okay. So no more letters of intent. You can sign what would you call it?
I would call it, along with the National Letter of Intent, which has been signed, I mean, the NLI program actually started in 1904. Athletes have also signed these like scholarship and financial aid agreements, right? Because you need to accept financial aid to get a scholarship. So certain documents like that may still exist.
So I've always understood that like the financial aid and those other documents, while you could sign them, they weren't necessarily binding. The only thing that was binding was the letter of intent. Or simply enrolling. The moment that you enroll, as long as they got a spot for you and all that, that moment that creates a binding deal, at least for 1 year in college football, where you're locked in. So, is it still gonna? We've had prospects ask out of their letter of intent. Are we gonna see that happening moving forward?
I think it's gonna be a lot more tricky, right? When athletes are making dollars from a collective or the institution that are revenue sharing dollars, I think that's when things get much more muddier than they already are. And that's when, right, if an athlete's supposed to make X amount of dollars in year one at their institution, walking out 2 or 3 months after they enroll in college, that is not going to be a situation where they're going to be able to pocket all the dollars that were guaranteed in year one. Okay. And that's what's going to make it more complicated.
So you think maybe if this goes the right way, this could lock guys into schools for a longer period of time eventually?
Eventually, you're never going to really be able to cap the movement that athletes are allowed to make
Even
in
once
college
revenue
sports.
sharing is involved?
Yeah, I mean that right. Like yesterday, right on Tuesday, the NCAA revamped their transfer portal legislation, right? So now you're gonna have 20 days as a college football player to go in December, and then 10 days in April. And the reason why they left the spring portal open for those 10 days, Josh, is because the minute you start to like really close in on when athletes can and can't enter, that's when lawsuits pop up, and that's when you get more antitrust violations.
Yeah, and the NCAA hasn't fared very well with those. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Where does this go in 25-26? Do we have a national signing day and them signing something other than a letter of intent?
Yeah, we will have a national signing day every year moving forward. I do think, though, that the entire recruiting calendar could be reshaped in the years to come.
Yeah.
And I think the document that athletes sign that bind them to an institution is going to break down how much revenue share dollars they're expected to make year by year. I think that is going to be in documents that they sign. Now, what it looks like in 2024, we're going to keep reporting on and trying to dive into to help you figure out what your December 4th is going to look like, Josh.
All right. Well, we woke up to a whole new world of recruiting. No more letters of intent. What does it mean for signing day? You guys, let us know. How are we feeling about these changes? Do you think ultimately these are the right moves being made by the NCAA? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk Miami recruiting. The Canes, they got it done last night. Huge flip. Joshua Moore, 4-star wide receiver committed to the Florida Gators, has now flipped his commitment to the Miami Hurricanes. Mario Cristobal and his staff now have 22 commitments and the number 10 ranked class in America. But guess what? Oh, you know, the Canes aren't done. You can feel the momentum building in Coral Gables on this video. I got a Zuby Charles from Canesport. He's going to break it all down on Miami's top remaining targets. But before we get going, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We love talking Miami recruiting. These are exciting times. Jump on board. Hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in a Zuby Charles. Joshua Moore. They get it done. I mean, we've been talking about this one for so long. So take us behind the scenes. Why'd Miami flip him midweek in early October when we've been hearing rumors for months that Joshua Moore could flip to the Canes?
Yeah, I want to start off by saying, Joshua Moore is a man of his word. Earlier this summer when I spoke with him, he said, hey, if Miami outdoes the Florida Gators this season, things may get interesting. We're midway through the year. Obviously, that's been the case. Miami's, very, very good on the field this year. And he said Coach KB has always been persistent in his recruitment, let him know, hey, you're committed to Gators, but we're going to, continue to recruit you to the very end. And that's what Miami's been doing. Obviously, behind the scenes, they've been working, tirelessly, really getting to know him, his parents, and his high school coach. I had the chance to talk with his high school coach after the commitment. He said it was a real full court press from Coach Kevin Beard, head coach Mario Cristobal, Shannon Dawson, all the way down that staff. So Miami remained persistent in this one. And then, as we saw yesterday, it worked out for them with him flipping. They really needed a big-time wide receiver. And Joshua Moore fits that mold and is a great, great, great addition to that Miami 2025 class.
Yeah, and, when Joshua Moore committed to the Gators, the word from all our experts was, we'll watch Florida State in Miami, but clearly with Florida State getting off to the start they did, Miami was the real threat. They finally get it done. How good is Joshua Moore? Why was he so coveted by the Canes?
The Canes really, really love his upside. It's not easy to find a 6'4", 200-pound wide receiver that can move like him. They've been high on him, since his junior year when they offered him. I think in 2022, he earned that offer at a camp, and he was, obviously the best wide receiver on hand. And Miami's loved the way he's progressed this year, and they think he can really, really be a big-time outside receiver down in Coral Gables for them down the road.
All right, the Florida Gator commit list looking vulnerable. We just see a Joshua Moore flip, a Zuby. Is Miami looking at any other commits on that Florida commit list right now? Anybody else they want to flip from the Florida Gators?
Yeah, I'm going to stay in that receiver room and, start with Vernell Brown. He's a guy that, Miami's also been very, very high on for a long time. And obviously, they're wanting to add to that wide receiver room. They're going to lose a lot of production from that group this year with guys like Xavier Restrepo and Jacoby George headed out of the room. So what better way than to bolster that, to bring in top guys? And, coincidentally, Florida had two of Miami's biggest, targets in that wide receiver class this cycle with Joshua Moore, who they flipped, and Vernell Brown. I don't think it's going to be easy taking away, Vernell Brown from the from the Florida Gators, but I think Miami's going to try to the very end with that one.
All right, Azubi, I got to talk to these guys real quick about Prize Picks. And here's who we're taking this week. We got Travis Hunter on the more than 97.5 receiving yards. And I'm also taking Jeremiah Smith, more than 68.5. I'll show you my lineup. I want you guys to play along. It's a power play here. Look at it. I'm putting 20 down to win 60. You guys know how to play Prize Picks. It's real simple. You pick 2 or more players, select their more than or less than on their stat line. Travis Hunter, he's been a big winner for me this year on more than one occasion. Last week, I took Cam Ward on the more than his passing yards. He hit. I took Carson Beck. He was 10 yards short. Oh, man. I should have known just to take the Canes, guys. So what about you? Give me your picks. Comment section below. I only want the locks. Let me know the locks. Let me know where we're making our money at. Prize Picks. It's easy. It's fun. A great way to play daily fantasy while you watch your favorite college football team. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to prizepicks.com/inside scoop. Use promo code Inside Scoop, and you receive a guaranteed $50 once you play 5. So if you play my lineup and only play $5 and you lose, you still have $50 in your account. So go to prizepicks.com/Inside Scoop, promo code Inside Scoop, receive a guaranteed $50 when you play 5. That's Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Azubi. Let's get more into these Miami flip targets. We got a couple more I want to talk about. And let's head up to Tallahassee. Why not? 5-star offensive lineman Solomon Thomas. That's a name that Miami fans know. We've been talking about it for a couple months in terms of somebody that Miami's trying to get in on. Florida State having a really bad start to their season. What's the latest on Solomon Thomas in Miami?
Yeah, with Solomon Thomas and the Hurricanes, it's been a bit quiet, but you can never count Miami out. With a guy like him, they are very, very high on Solomon Thomas and have been for a little while. Coach Alex Mirabal, Coach Mario Cristobal love the type of prospect he is. What better way than give it to your in-state rival than, flipping their top, recruit in their 2025 class. So I'm expecting things to, continue to be quiet. I don't think this is going to be a recruitment where he's, popping up and making big-time visits. I think this is something that's going to be behind the scenes, but I will not be surprised if Miami's, really in the mix with Solomon Thomas come December and things get a little bit interesting.
All right, let's talk about the 2 USC commits on this list. You got edge Hayden Lowe, corner Shamar Arno, both at positions of need for Miami in this recruiting class. What do you make of these 2 Trojan flip targets, and who do you think Miami has a better shot at right now?
Now I'm going to say better shot at with Hayden Lowe because he did take that official visit over the summer, down there in Coral Gables, and he's expected to get back down to Miami on October 26th to watch that Florida State game. Jason Taylor was out on the West Coast earlier this week, so I'm not surprised to hear that Hayden Lowe is kind of in the mix and popping back up on the recruiting scene for Miami. And then with Shamar, USC commit out of Georgia, originally from South Florida, so he has a lot of ties to the area. A lot of his family still lives down there. And he actually said they want him, or would hope for him to play for the local program that he grew up watching. So he's going to be back down there on October 26th. And Miami's looking to bolster that defensive back class. They have a lot of talented guys in that group right now. They're looking to add more guys before it's all said and done. So 2 USC commits expected in Miami on October 26th, and Miami defensive back coach Chevis Jackson will be in Georgia to check in on Shamar. So I think things might get interesting. We might see a fun battle between the Trojans and the Hurricanes on the recruiting trail.
Absolutely. I want to talk defensive lineman Jarquez Carter before we get out of the flip target segment. Now, Carter, he's an in-state defensive lineman in the state of Florida, committed to Ohio State. We know Florida's been after him. Florida State's been after him. Everybody trying to flip him. Where does Miami stand in this battle?
I think Miami's in a good spot right now. Ever since he committed to Ohio State, they've remained, consistent in his recruitment, not pushing too hard, but just letting them know, hey, we're still here. We're still going to recruit you. And they also landed a commitment from his teammate at Newberry High School, Micah Newton, who's doing his fair share of recruiting as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, Jarquez back on campus in Miami. And I think if they do that, things may get a lot more interesting between them. They think he's a very, very good player, both on and off the field, and they value him. So I don't think Miami's going away anytime soon in this recruitment. They flipped guys from Ohio State the past 2 cycles, as we all know that, and they're looking to do that the 3rd straight year. So we'll see if they can get that done.
Yeah, a tradition like no other. Miami flipping a top recruit from Ohio State at the end of the cycle. Mario Cristobal has this tradition down. All right. So if we're going to talk Miami recruiting momentum, then we got to talk the big one. Like, who is the big one this year? And I think I've identified him. I think it's Elijah Griffin. And okay, we got a big hurdle we got to jump this week. This weekend, he's going to Georgia for his official visit, and it's his birthday. He hasn't set a commitment date officially, but Azubi, you and I both know recruits love significant dates and putting their commitment on it. Also, he's there for an official visit. There's a lot of things that line up. But let's just say hypothetically Elijah Griffin doesn't make a decision, because he has also hinted that he was going to take this thing to distance as well. So let's say he doesn't make a decision this weekend. Is Elijah Griffin, do you consider him the big one for this year? And what does Miami need to do to land him?
100%. He's, one of the top left uncommitted guys on the prospect, a position of need that Miami is looking to fill this cycle. And I think he is, the top guy remaining on that board for the Hurricanes that's not committed right now. For the Hurricanes to really back in this one, obviously, they have to get out this weekend with Jordan. If he gets out the weekend without committing, I think Miami has to, turn on that full court press, get him back on campus. He was supposed to visit, earlier this fall, Ball State. Things didn't work out. He didn't make his way down to South Florida. So I think the biggest thing is getting him back on campus. We all know having that last visit, having, that last taste in their mouth before they make that decision is so crucial in a lot of guys' recruitment. So if Miami can get him back on campus, whether for an unofficial visit, because he already took his official during the summer, I think that would be huge for Miami and really give them that last shot to say, hey, you can do all what you want to do down in Miami. You don't have to stay home. Come down to South Florida and come play for the Canes. So getting him back on campus is the number one priority, in my opinion.
All right, big weekend again for the Canes. But guys, talk to us, Miami fans. How are you feeling about some of these flip targets? Let us know. Comment section below. Who, out of the ones that I mentioned, do you think is the most important? Or maybe it's somebody I didn't mention at all. Let us know. Let's talk Tennessee recruiting, as Tennessee has not hosted a home football game or recruits since September 14th when Kent State was in town. But this weekend, Neyland Stadium will be buzzing as the rival Florida Gators come to town, and it's going to be a great weekend to have recruits in Knoxville. I got Tennessee recruiting insider Matt Ray of VolQuest. He's going to be on the show. We're going to go behind the scenes of this big visit weekend. But first, Tennessee fans, do me a favor, hit subscribe. Recruiting's heating up. You want to be on board, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. All right, let's bring in Matt Ray from VolQuest. Matt, last weekend did not go the way Tennessee fans, or really the rest of the country, thought it would. They lose to Arkansas. So how important is it? I'm looking at the visitor list. How important is it to get these guys back on campus after that disappointing loss?
Yeah, I think you said it best in the intro there. Tennessee hasn't been at home since September 14th against Kent State. So, one, just to be able to get back home, host some recruits, and kind of go through, reestablishing some momentum with top 2026 targets that you had, on campus over the spring and the summer, I think is big. And then I think to get your commitments back to campus and have them around and have them back around your program is also very big. If you look at this list for Tennessee, they're going to have the bulk of their, top 10 recruiting class for 2025 on campus, headlined by David Sanders, George McIntyre, Travis Smith will be back in town. So it's a really big weekend just in terms of getting back, getting resettled, because you've got a month here now with a bye week kind of jam there in between, but a month of being able to host guys for some big atmosphere starting this weekend with Florida. Follow that up with Alabama, then the bye week, and then you have Kentucky coming to town to kick off November. So it's 3 really important home games for Tennessee on the recruiting calendar as well.
Hey, Inside Scoop fans, whether you're cheering for the Titans or the Colts on October 13th, plan for a pit stop at the Whataburger food truck during your tailgate. That's right, we're going to be in Nashville getting ready to watch the Titans and the Colts. So get your team ready by securing an easy W first with a hot, fresh Whataburger. So no matter who comes out on top, when you take your team to Whataburger, you're going to feel like a winner by getting your food made your way, fresh and hot every time, 24/7. So see you at the game and see you at Whataburger. So remember, if you're tailgating, Titans Colts, October 13, we're going to be there. We're taping the Inside Scoop live from the tailgate. It's going to be really cool. So remember to come out, Whataburger. That's the easiest win you'll get all season. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a really big month of October for Tennessee. One of the things I want to talk to you about, it's great to see these guys on campus, but there's also been Tennessee commits taking visits elsewhere. I want to talk to you about 2 of them right now. Linebacker Jaden Harmon going to Alabama for some visits, and also Laganza Shady Hayward at Georgia. Let's start with Harmon. What are you hearing between Harmon, Alabama, and Tennessee?
Yeah, I think Alabama may be a little bit surprised by the Jaden Harmon flip back there in August. He played that pretty close to the vest, but they gave the dust a chance to settle, and they started reaching right back out and continuing to recruit him the same way that they had before, and were able to get him over to campus for the Georgia game. And obviously, that was an incredible atmosphere for him. But as that visit's got further and further away, continue to like the things that we hear about Tennessee. I think he's had really fantastic dialogue with William Inge, who's been really good in this recruitment for the Vols. Jaden Harmon expected back on campus, this month. Most likely these next 2 weekends, with the Alabama weekend potentially being an official visit weekend for him, as he has not yet taken an official visit to Tennessee because he committed so early in the process. So that's something the Vols have in their back pocket. But these next 2 weekends, I think, for Jaden Harmon are important just in terms of he's past the stage of needing to see the bright lights and
Right.
the shiny things that go into this recruiting process. He's in that football focus, football fit kind of mode. And these next 2 weeks, if you're Tennessee, you have a chance to showcase, kind of what you can do and how you see him fitting into your defense. Florida, they're going to do a lot of things that stress Tennessee's linebackers. It was why they were able to have success last year in Gainesville. So Tennessee looking to clean those things up. And then obviously in 2 weeks when Alabama comes to town, I think Arion Carter's role for Tennessee that week in terms of what Tennessee will try to do to spy Jalen Milroe and combat some of the things that Alabama does there is one of those ways that Tennessee sees Jaden Harmon being able to fit into the defense. So a couple of really important weekends if you're able to get him to campus for both. But yeah, I continue to like right now where Tennessee sits for Jaden Harmon here as October's rolling on.
Yeah. There should be some level of concern there with Jaden Harmon, but back on, as long as Tennessee keeps winning and he keeps showing back up on campus, I think Tennessee will be good there. Now let's talk about Lagonza Shady Hayward. Did you catch the quote that he had to Georgia reporters coming out of that game about the atmosphere at Georgia? And he left it as, yeah, it was great, but it wasn't like Neyland. I mean, did you catch that?
I did catch that. And, I think for Shady Hayward, I think that's something for him. The first time that he was in Neyland was back last November. Tennessee offered him in person. Tim Banks was the one that extended that offer, and that's something that's meant something to him throughout this process. But just kind of getting that offer that day, going out, seeing that environment was such a big deal to him. And he called me back in the spring, late February, early March there, and kind of told me at the time, like, how important that was to him. And it was pretty adamant that he felt like Tennessee would be home for him throughout this recruiting process. He would keep his mind open, and he did that. We saw that during official visits. Georgia made a swing. We saw some other schools try to make a push and get in there and shake things up for him. But ultimately, every time Tennessee's been able to get him back to campus, they've been able to offset some of that momentum. They were his last official visit. They offset any momentum that Georgia, South Carolina, and some others had picked up during that month of June and got his commitment there in the summer. And then now, obviously, he goes over to Georgia, but I think he still continued to have really good conversation with Tennessee, with the entire staff, kind of from top to bottom. And he'll be back on campus this weekend, and as that visit again gets further away, I like where Tennessee sits. Obviously, I think you said it earlier, Josh, there's a little bit of a level of concern anytime any of your commits, guys that you've been in on for such an extended period of time, show up on another campus.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe even more so from the outside looking in when it's, Alabama and Georgia. So I think right now, obviously, those two schools are going to recruit Jaden Harmon and Shady Hayward to the finish line. Tennessee's been well aware of that, and, they just have to continue to win to get them to campus and, have that conversation, that really good positive dialogue that they've been able to have here for some time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, Hayward, he's from the state of Georgia. It came down to two teams. Of course, you're going to be concerned if he goes to a Georgia-Auburn matchup, but coming out of there, I mean, I don't think Tennessee fans could want him to say anything less than that. That atmosphere did not clearly stack up to what he experienced in Neyland. More big visit weekends to come, though. We teased it. We said October is going to be loaded. But generally speaking, who do you think Tennessee really needs to get on campus this month?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think it starts with Isaiah Campbell over in North Carolina, right? The recent Clemson decommitment. He's scheduled to be in town October 19th.
Mm-hmm.
Like any of those North Carolina kids right now, getting to and from different campuses is going to be a little bit more challenging because of the impact of the weather in the area and the driving and
Yeah.
inability to drive through certain parts of Northeast Tennessee and parts of Western North Carolina. But I expect him in town next week, and I think that's a really important visit for Tennessee. He's a guy that Rodney Garner and staff have coveted for some time. Tennessee was able to get him to campus around this time last year, and determined then that they wanted to swing big for him. But he turned around and committed to Clemson just a couple of months later, and he didn't take any visits as per the Dabo policy. But now with things open, you've got a really good chance if you're Tennessee to kind of put your best foot forward. North Carolina and some other schools involved, but it feels like ahead of that official visit, Tennessee's primed, in this recruitment to make a really strong run toward the finish. And then I think you just want to keep getting your 2026s back to campus. These guys that you've already established really good relationships with and, put that time in with. Kendra Harrison set to be in town for the Alabama game. Leo Delaney set to come back to town for the Alabama game. I mean, the list just kind of goes on here over the month of 4 and 5 star guys, top 100 guys that will be to campus. I think if you're Tennessee, you just want to get them there. You just continue to build that momentum, right? Because we talk about it frequently, but Florida and Alabama in 2022, those wins for the Vols were huge. Those atmospheres, it was a checker kneeling against Florida, and it was, a field storming win against Alabama. And, that paid dividends down the stretch. That got you in the door with a guy like Mike Matthews and, really, push things open there and with several other guys. So I think, just getting those guys here, being able to put that product on the field and continue to build is the main thing for Tennessee.
Yeah, keep put that winning product on the field. Keep getting these guys coming back to campus, and everything's going to fall into place. So Tennessee fans, talk to us. Let us know. Comment section below. Who do you think's going to win on Saturday night in Neyland? Let us know. Give us your score prediction. Comment section below. Let's talk Oregon Ducks recruiting. We got a big game atmosphere, a primetime kickoff, and game day is in Eugene this weekend. It's the Ducks versus the Buckeyes, and I got Director of Recruiting Chad Simmons to get an early look at what could end up being one of the biggest early season visit weekends so far. We're going to break it all down, but before we get into it, Duck fans, do me a favor right now. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We got a big weekend coming up. We're going to be talking Ducks recruiting for a while. Jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in the great Chad Simmons now. Naeem Offord, the 5-star corner. He headlines the group coming in. How do we feel about Offord's commitment to Ohio State? Because it's interesting. He's visiting on the Oregon sideline. So what about the Ducks? Is there a shot here to flip him?
Yeah, honestly, Josh, I mean, talking about, like you said first about where he stands with Ohio State, I mean, what we think about his commitment status, I mean, we hear more about Auburn and Oregon probably than Ohio State. He hasn't been back since the OV. There hadn't really been any dates thrown out to me, maybe the Michigan game or whatnot at the end of the month, but or end of November, I should say. But you hear more about Auburn. I think obviously first and foremost being the in-state school, been there multiple times for games this season. And then Oregon. Oregon obviously piqued his interest for this first visit there to Eugene earlier this year. He's in communication with multiple staffers, including head coach Dan Lanning. And he's very intrigued by Oregon. Just that first visit opened his eyes, and the atmosphere, the environment, obviously the brand of Nike, the opportunities there. He wants to see see game day atmosphere, the environment, watch the team, how they play. He mentioned to me back then that he wanted to see the coaches, players interaction and really kind of see get a deeper dive into the program on this visit. So I think he'll obviously, watch Ohio State, but I think the focus will be on Oregon this weekend. It's their chance to really make a move here.
All right. Now, kind of a reverse order here. We're going to talk about Dallas Wilson. He's committed to Oregon, but much like Naeem Alford, he's looking around as well. He was at UCF. We know Miami, Texas, FSU. Others would love to flip him. And while he's solid, he is still entertaining others. So long-time commitment. Where do you think it all stands right now with Dallas Wilson?
Yeah, where I would label Alford, I would say maybe a little shaky with Ohio State. I think Wilson's still pretty solid with Oregon. Look, I think he surprised us all being from down in Tampa, Florida, committing to Oregon even before he ever stepped foot in Eugene. He committed to a school all the way across the country. But he's been pretty strong and pretty solid with the Ducks ever since. I think what holds that together is wide receivers coach Junior Adams and head coach Dan Lanning. He FaceTimes with those guys every day. Those guys kick off the morning together. They have conversations about football, non-football. He feels close with that coaching staff. And I still feel good about Oregon in their position right now with Dallas. I still think Miami is the biggest threat. I think they have a big game coming up with Florida State in a few weeks. I would not be surprised if Dallas is in Coral Gables for that game against Florida State. They talk with him almost every day as well. Kevin Beard, Mario Cristobal. You mentioned other schools. He has an OV to Florida State still set for Thanksgiving weekend in November. Texas, Florida. I mean, look, he's a freak playmaker. Any school in the country would love to take him away from Oregon. He'll go back. He'll have a great time, see probably a great game this weekend and come off this trip still feeling good about Oregon. And I think they have to feel good about their position. But until he signs in December, I think you have to watch Miami and those other schools as they continue to try to chip away at his commitment.
All right. What about cornerback Brandon Finney? Now, he's another Duck commit that teams are coming after. And this one, though, it looks like there's one team to watch, and that's Penn State. How important is his visit to Eugene this weekend?
Yeah, very important, Josh. I mean, going back to Alford saying a little shaky, I mean, I'd say very shaky with Brandon Finney in Oregon right now. He went to Michigan last month, set up an official visit for November with the Wolverines. But after going to Penn State last weekend for an unofficial visit, there's a lot of buzz around the Nittany Lions there. I mean, they've had a lot of success at his high school over the years. He knows some players there in Happy Valley. He likes the coaching staff, sees a good fit. And obviously that's much closer to home for him than Eugene, all the way across the country in Oregon. So this weekend is very big for him. Just kind of the feel for him. Does he like the flight back across the country? Yeah. Is he comfortable in that setting? It's going to be a pretty much big back-to-back weekend for him going from Penn State to Oregon. I think we'll know something pretty quickly coming off this trip to Oregon. Does he feel good about Oregon, kind of shut things down and cancel that trip to Michigan? Does he come back and maybe flip to Penn State? There's a lot of buzz around Penn State. I think, right now, even though he's committed to Oregon, I would give Penn State the momentum. Can Oregon grab that back this weekend? That's the biggest question.
All right. A lot of interesting storylines to follow, and none bigger than Jakeem Stewart being on campus. Now, if you don't know who Jakeem Stewart is, we've talked about him a lot on this channel this week, so go check out one of those videos. But Chad, this is Jakeem Stewart's first official visit since the reclassification, and it seems to me like LSU's probably the team out front right now. So can the Ducks make up the ground on LSU and have a legit shot to land Jakeem Stewart?
Yeah, it's depending on who you talk to, you hear about LSU, Ohio State, USC being that top school, but it's a pretty tight group. It seems between those three. Yeah. You don't, at least on my end, you don't hear Oregon mentioned as potentially that top school. Lanning and his staff want to change that narrative coming out of this weekend. Look, they've done nothing wrong. They're a top 4 school for a reason. They had him on campus multiple days in June. He worked out with the staff. He's very comfortable there. He knows the people, the brand, sees a good opportunity. But it seems like they do have some ground to make up this weekend. He knows he'll see a great game. He gets to watch not only one, but 2 of his top 4 schools with Ohio State and Oregon playing in Autzen Stadium. So this is a big weekend for Oregon with Jakeem Stewart. I mean, obviously his recruitment has moved up a full year. He'll sign in December. He'll enroll in January. Oregon seems to be 4th, according to sources, on this list right now. Will they be higher this time next week? That's the goal for Dan Lanning this weekend.
Yeah. All right, so as we talk midweek, we know there's going to be a bigger flood of visitors coming in as this game gets closer, but any other names out there that you're hearing right now that Oregon is trying to get to campus this weekend that we need to keep an eye on?
I think a lot of, underclassmen are out there. I mean, one 2025 guy that we saw Dan Lanning fly down the helicopter to see was Noel McHale, Texas A&M commit, Oregon still daily communication there. A&M obviously 5-1, off to a good start here under Mike Elko. Yeah. So coming off a big win over Missouri, but that's a name I've heard to watch. Now, right now I'm hearing he's likely not going to be there, but we're still got 3 or 4 days to go now, Josh. So we'll see what happens there. He's a California kid, but Kendra Harrison's #1 tight end in 2026. He's expected to be there. They had some good 2026 guys on campus last weekend for the Michigan State game. Zion Ely, Jaira Edwards. So Kendra Harrison, a guy trying to make up some ground with against North Carolina and Tennessee there. But I think the big one for 2025 to watch, based on what I'm hearing, is Noel McHale, if they can get him on campus or not.
All right, Duck fans, talk to us. How you feeling about this game? Give us your predictions. Also, if Oregon wins it, who do you think they make up ground with? Who do you think they land? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk Alabama recruiting. The coaching staff and the fans, they're still picking up the pieces after that shocking loss to Vanderbilt. I got Tim Watts on from Bama Online. We're going to find out what impact that stunning loss had on recruiting. Also, Bama returns home this weekend. We're going to find out who's going to be on campus. But before we get into it, Alabama fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits page. We're not going to stop talking Alabama recruiting, so you might as well jump on board and hit subscribe. All right, let's bring on the great Tim Watts. So, Tim, how's the staff handling the loss to Vandy in terms of recruiting? I saw Dijon Lee, the 5-star from Cali. He's already been on the phone with Kalen DeBoer in the wake of the loss. Are they being proactive? Are they reaching out to some of their top commits right now?
I think that's just their normal, method of operation. One thing they do really well is communicate with these guys. I don't think there was some panic. When these kids were committed, Alabama was 7th in the preseason. They lost the game. They're 7th currently. It's not like there's some big, 4-loss season at the hand. So I think it's fine. Kids have questions. I think they answer it, but they're really good about keeping up that communication, talking to them every week. And, if kids have questions or want to talk, they pick up the phone, very easily accessed.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see it, but was there, and it's one game, and the week prior, they beat Georgia at home. So was there any uneasiness from a recruit in particular, or was it kind of everybody holding the line?
We're not aware of anybody that was panicked by that. I think probably shock for everybody, even people that aren't Bama fans or committed. Alabama's kind of shocked because, like you said, you beat Georgia the week before, you lose to Vandy the next week. That's about as much as a 180 as you can do as far as the SEC play goes. So I haven't heard of anybody concerned about, hey, they lost to Vandy, I'm out of here. I don't think that's really, these kids, you have to explain that on the roundtable message board a lot. The kids don't take it nearly the way the adults take it. It's a total adult reaction. I know that sounds funny, but kids are just so aloof, and even from their own games, they recover quicker than the parents do.
Yeah, I think a lot of that gets lost on the message boards. The high school players, they have their own locker room. They understand a loss. They understand a win. They understand what it means within that context, whereas fans on the message board tend to be a little extreme about wins and losses. So, yeah, it's kind of funny how recruits, you go and talk to the recruits after the loss, and they're kind of the voice of reason. So this weekend, though, Alabama gets a reset. They're back at home, back in the friendly confines in Tuscaloosa, and South Carolina comes to town. So is it important for the staff to try to get the commits and recruits back on campus for this weekend after a loss like last weekend?
No, I don't think so. It's 11 a.m. kickoff. A lot of those guys are playing until 11 p.m. at night or close to it. You play a 7 o'clock kickoff. 3-hour game, you get home, you get showered, you hang out with your girlfriend or your friends. It's close to midnight on Friday. And then to get up the next morning at 6 maybe to get to Tuscaloosa is sort of a hard pull anyways. Most 11 o'clock games don't have a lot of visitors. Now, I do think there will be a lot of visitors. There'll be a fair amount of visitors, but I think a lot of it could be underclassmen. And that's probably good because that's your chance to get – because, of course, you're paying the most attention to the seniors. Yeah. So it's a good time to get to know the younger guys a little bit better. They get a little bit more one-on-one time. And also, you never know. We've seen surprise visitors show up late. It's Wednesday, it's the middle of the week. There's still decisions to be made. Some of these guys think they're going places they're not. Some haven't decided where they're going to go.
Yeah, we'll probably see some late additions to that list. And you're right, this is a time to kind of start working ahead on those 26, 27 targets. Good weekend to do that. All right, I saw on the website this week, there's an ACC flip target that's trending in Alabama's direction. Tim, I want to talk to you about Marshall Pritchett. He's 6'5", 220-pound tight end from Georgia who's committed to North Carolina. What's the latest on him in terms of his recruitment to Alabama?
It's been interesting because Alabama has Caleb Edwards committed, a big tight end from California. He's a big 250. I mean, they list him at 250. I've been watching his high school games. He's absolutely a monster. He's going to end up in line. BOL's reported the whole time they would take a second tight end. They want, you want that yin and yang type deal if you do that. Two different guys, two different skill sets. Marshall falls along those lines. Committed to North Carolina, as you said. Alabama he's taking an official visit to Alabama, unofficial visit to Alabama back in March or April, whenever it was. And then he came for the Georgia game. So there's been communication there. But at the same time, Andrew Olish, Alabama's still recruiting him. So this could just be a case of whoever decides to take that spot first. I think they do want to add that second guy to complement Caleb Edwards as far as skill sets go.
All right, Tim, any other flip targets that Alabama fans should be aware of right now?
I think Donovan Starr's one. He's committed to Auburn. He's had a good senior year. He's had a lot of people recruiting him, paying attention. He's mentioned possibly taking a visit to Alabama. Courtney Morgan went out and saw him, extended an offer after watching him play. So he's a guy we're keeping an eye on. Obviously, he's committed to Auburn. A lot of schools showing him that attention. And maybe they want to add another defensive back because they still got to add safeties in this class, whether it be prep guys or the portal. But I think they're adding another corner. Got some of that position flexibility with a lot of these guys because they could slide into that nickel, maybe even, drift out to the safety position. So I think Starr's one we're also watching.
All right, Bama fans, we got a bounce back weekend. Talk to me, comment section below. How we feeling about recruiting? It's just one loss, right? Recruiting's still going to roll on. Talk to me, comment section below. It's officially decommitment season, and we've already seen some big-name prospects in recent days reopen their recruitments and put themselves back on the market. So on this video, I got On3's Director of Recruiting, Chad Simmons, on. We're going to talk about some of the biggest names that are back on the market. But before we get into it, guys, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we want you to be a part of it. So jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring on Chad Simmons. And Chad, where do we start? There's been a bunch of big decommitments since the season started. Let's talk about one of the most recent ones, which happened over the weekend. Offensive tackle Mario Nash Jr. announces his decommitment, and maybe the timing of it could give us some clues on who he's considering. But this weekend, Mario Nash took an official visit to FSU, and about 24 hours after that visit ended, he decommitted. So, Chad, just looking at this Mario Nash Jr. recruitment, who do you think the main teams involved are?
Yeah, I don't think we were shocked by this decommitment. Josh, first off, he's taken visits, all fall from Ole Miss to Alabama to Florida State, tried to get to LSU, couldn't make it there earlier this year. We'll see if he gets back maybe later on this fall. But, I think obviously Florida State has to feel good about where they're at right now. Anytime a kid, decommits coming off that official visit, you have to obviously think that school and that visit made an impact on that decision. So I think, he's been there half a dozen times or more. He's very familiar with Tallahassee, Alex Atkins, Mike Norvell. He's a chance to play early. So a lot of things about FSU have them, if not the team to beat, one of the teams to beat. I think FSU's biggest competition today is Ole Miss. He's been there for a game this season. He'll probably be back at least once, maybe twice later on this fall, talking about the Georgia game in Oxford later on, maybe one more trip as well. But that's an in-state school for him, close to home. He knows that coaching staff well, from John Garrison to Lane Kiffin to Coach Weiss, the OC. So he's comfortable there. I think those are the two to watch. He was at Alabama, still communicates with LSU. He's talked to Clemson. Mississippi State is not going to give up on him. But I think right now Florida State and Ole Miss are the two to watch for Mario Nash.
Yeah. And do you think any other teams could get involved? Because we don't see a lot of players at a premium position, like an offensive tackle, kind of reemerge like this. So do you think that other teams are going to try to kick the tires and get in on this one?
I mean, it probably couldn't hurt their chances, but I think he kind of goes back to his original list and kind of the people he feels good about, the relationships that he's had already built and established. But, you never know. But I would expect him to kind of pick a school from that initial list that he knows about that program, about that coaching staff.
All right, let's go to another premium player that reopened his recruitment. This was a little earlier in the season. Edge Javian Hilson, I believe it was like week 1 or 2, announced that he was decommitting from FSU. Now he's taken a visit to UCF. He's been to Texas previously. He's been back to FSU. So how do you view this recruitment of Edge Javian Hilson, who is really one of the best pass rushers in America that's still available?
Yeah, I mean, look, this kid's full of surprises. I mean, I watched him in the state championship game last year in December, had the Gator gear on. Next thing you know, at midnight, he's committing to Alabama. Then he comes out of nowhere and decommits, and then just up and, pretty quickly after, commits to Florida State, and obviously then changes his mind there and decommits. And he's, like you said, been to Florida State, he's been to Florida, this year already as well. And there was some buzz about Texas going back to the summer. And I think that's kind of, again, the smart money pick is the Texas Longhorns. I mean, he's supposed to be back maybe for the Georgia game here in about a week and a half or so. And there was talk he'd be there in September, couldn't make it. So will he make it to Austin later on this month? We'll wait and see. But, multiple schools are still in contact with him, including Alabama and some others. But I think right now Texas is probably the smart pick of who's trending. But look, he's been surprising us all throughout the cycle. So we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens next with Hilson.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see him back at FSU saying good things about the team that he just decommitted from. So we'll have to see with Hilson. I agree. I still kind of like Texas in that one. Now, let's stay in the trenches. Defensive lineman Isaiah Campbell, he reopened his recruitment when he was committed to the Clemson Tigers. Now, it seems like Tennessee might be the team to beat, but he also plays a premier position on that defensive line. So who's involved?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to good sources there just in the last 24 hours. I still think it's basically the same two schools, North Carolina and Tennessee. Some schools have reached out, but, I think the family feels good about the relationships they have with the staff in the in-state school, Chapel Hill, and then obviously in Knoxville. He'll be back in Knoxville for the Tennessee-Alabama game for an official visit there. And that's the team I like right now, kind of setting the pace. We talked about with Mario Nash. I mean, when he decommitted and coming off that Florida State visit, Isaiah Campbell did the same thing coming off a UNC unofficial visit. But I just like where Tennessee, the buzz has kind of been behind the scenes, big about Tennessee, really going back to the spring and early summer when he made that decision. There's been consistent communication between Campbell, his family, and Rodney Garner, Josh Heupel. Tennessee is obviously off to a good start, coming off a tough loss, obviously, at Arkansas. But I think he likes the position room. He likes the position coach and Rodney Garner. And I see Tennessee right now as the team to beat.
Okay, keep an eye on it. See if he shows up in Knoxville this weekend. Big night game against Florida. We know it's going to be a big visit list. We'll see if he shows. Another defensive lineman on here, Stephon Shivers. Maybe he's not a decommit after all. We're going to put the tweet up here for some context. But he, on Saturday morning, said that he's reopening his recruitment from Georgia. He's been committed there for a while. But in the same breath, he says he's still committed. So do you consider Stephon Shivers well, we know he's not a solid commitment if he is a commitment to Georgia. But do you consider him a Georgia commit at this time?
I don't even want to talk about it, Josh. I don't know any more than you do. No, I actually do think he is still committed. I think from reaching out and talking to him and his people, I think what he was trying to say there is he was going to listen to other schools, still communicate or open up, his ear to see who reaches out and what they have to say, potentially taking other visits. But yes, based on what I'm being told, I still consider Shivers a Georgia commit, and I still consider Shivers a Georgia target. So I do think other schools could potentially, get him on campus. He's going to listen, like he said, I think, to other schools. But
who do you think is maybe the team or teams that he like? Do you think that he just put this out there to spark interest in his recruitment, or do you think he put this out there because he's been talking to some other teams and maybe wants to take some visits?
Yeah, I think more of the first, what you said, that the first, as far as opening to kind of see maybe who is interested in him. Maybe let them know, hey, I'm not 100% locked in with George. The hot team around him has been Vanderbilt. He's obviously from Tennessee, from the area. Big win, obviously, on Saturday against Alabama. We'll see if he shows up in the 615 at some point this season. But look, D-line, specifically that body type, 6'4", 6'5", 380, that is a need for Georgia in this class. They're missing that
everybody
guy right now this season. They play that 3-4. They need that nose guard, that zero tech. They don't have that right now, at least not playing at this moment this season for Georgia. So I think he knows he's still a Georgia want and a Georgia need. So I see him as a Georgia commit and a Georgia target. Let's see what happens in the coming weeks.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of making some noise, wide receiver Malachi Toney, he had a couple big announcements in the past couple weeks. First, Malachi Toney announced that he was reclassifying. Now, he was committed to Miami Hurricanes, and he announced, I'm reclassifying from 26 up to 25. We've seen that happen before. Then he takes a visit to Alabama. Much like Mario Nash Jr., about 24 hours after that visit to Alabama, Malachi Toney announces that he's no longer committed to Miami. Chad, who are the teams involved? What are you hearing on Malachi Toney? And is there a chance he could end up on Miami's commit list once again?
Yeah, well, one thing I can say for sure is receiver is a big need for Miami in this class. I mean, they now have one receiver committed. They're trying to get other guys and flip a guy like Joshua Moore from Florida or even Vernell Brown from Florida, Dallas Wilson from Oregon. They're trying to get even Jamie French still communication there a little bit with Miami as well. That's a position of need. So I do think they'll continue to recruit Malachi Toney right there in their backyard at American Heritage High School. But again, you have to look at Alabama as now be the trending school, that the easy pick if there is one. But it's really been, on my end, pretty quiet about really where Malachi Toney is at. Basically, I'm hearing there's really no imminent commitment expected. But Malachi's never been one to talk a lot about his recruitment, to kind of share what he's thinking about the process. So we're trying to put some pieces together behind the scenes. But from what I've gathered, no visits are scheduled right now for Malachi Toney. He had a very good trip to Alabama for the Georgia game, decommitted shortly thereafter. So you have to like where Alabama's at right now. But from what I gather, there's really no expected decision here anytime soon. But again, he reclassifies, so we could see some official visits taken now in the coming months before he makes that decision. We'll see what teams kind of pick up some steam there.
Yeah, well, there's only about 10 or 11 weeks until the early signing day, so you guys let us know. We gave you the decommits from the first month of the season. Let us know, who do you guys think could be the next round of decommitments? Any names out there that you're watching? Let us know. Comment section below.